Hello, I'm Ron, and today with Gareth on this TechCaptains episode, we welcome Chris Miller, Senior Vice President at NetGain Solutions. With over 17 years in finance and accounting within tech, services, and healthcare, Chris has a storied career. More recently and notably at NetSuite, he was a key figure known for his innovative solutions to complex challenges and earning multiple MVP awards, some of them with interesting names. A certified public accountant and MBA holder from the University of Colorado, Chris has held a significant role, including CFO, Director of Finance. But before I keep reading your whole CV, if I may say, let's hear from your unique perspective then on finance, technology, and navigating complex business landscapes. So, Chris, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, and thank you
Mm.
for the invite to be able to talk to you guys today.
That's great. That's great. So, Chris, like, in order to start this, obviously your career, like, you started in the late 90s. You were, you were
hmm
a controller, then you work in accounting, then you were at
hmm
NetSuite, you founded NetGain. So, like, can you walk us a bit through
hmm
your career here?
Yeah, absolutely. I started uh, our our family business was building custom homes, and then we also had a brick and masonry business. So when I went to grad school and came out, I thought I was going to focus in real estate my entire life and really, really spend my career in construction, real estate finance. And so I had focused on that, and then I became those pieces. Well, as careers go, I had you had the 2008 Great Recession and things looked out, and so I made a change and went to healthcare. And so I was the head of accounting for a company called Clear Choice Dental, and they were one of the really large dental implants. Well, at the time, we were looking for systems, and I'd never even heard of NetSuite, but we set up a meeting and ended up doing that. And I'd always been really good at kind of the accounting systems and things like that, but it just really clicked. At the time, we were NetSuite's really most complex customer, and I had to really push it and get NetSuite to do
Yeah.
some things that even they thought it couldn't do. And so I kind of came around and did that. So one of the things that I ended up being was the customer reference for NetSuite. I had gone to a couple of large events. I went to Gartner one time, and the way I ended up here and kind of found my calling in software was ClearChoice became took a private equity investment, and I kind of did the audits and the help with the due diligence, and we ended up I had my bonus, and then I was always getting calls, from NetSuite partners and people, hey, would you ever be interested in doing this? And finally, I got one that was really good,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about taking it. My wife said, well, hey, why don't you call Zach Nelson? He was the CEO of NetSuite at the time, and I got to know him again as being a customer reference where I had traveled a couple of times with him. I thought that's a great idea, and so he I called Zach, and I thought he'd say one of two things. Hey, Chris, that's a great offer, take it. Or he'd say, hey, I got 10 companies saying they need help with a controller who understands NetSuite. Which one do you want to go to? And he didn't. He said, hey, Chris, don't even call them back. He said, get on a plane and come see me tomorrow. And so I did, and I found my true calling at NetSuite. And so what I did there was I ran the Finance Center of Excellence, and then I really had three roles. I was very tied into product. A lot of the features that
Yeah.
got created in NetSuite, I got to be part of. And then my job was really to take NetSuite where it had never been before and explain and really solve the problems and build the credibility. And so that's really what I did. And then the way, and I was there and absolutely love it there. It's honestly, NetSuite's such a fantastic place to work. The only reason I left was, when you say, well, why did you go out? Is we saw an opportunity where we could do technical accounting stuff and really start to fill in some of the gaps for NetSuite. And the only thing better than working in NetSuite was doing NetSuite with some of my best friends. So some of us, we went
Mm-hmm.
out and we formed NetGain, and uh, you know, because we understood it so well, we were able to very quickly create the things that we were kind of getting slowed down from the size of NetSuite and the with Oracle. And from there, it's been fantastic. I did a stint at Workday for a short time, and great to be here.
So NetGain is a suite of various apps that you can embed inside NetSuite itself.
Yeah, so we have think of us as
Mm.
two different business lines, if you will. The first one that we do is we build embedded apps on the NetSuite platform, and our focus is on the office of the CFO. So that's really where each
Yeah.
of the partners, each of us were CPAs. We had each done things in various places, and so we had seen where NetSuite really worked for these for companies and what was right. So we build around the really complex, uncool stuff that everybody wishes that they had inside NetSuite. So things like lease accounting, financing, close management, and then what we do is that's half of the business. And the reason, apart from loving NetSuite, the other half is that NetSuite really is the ultimate proving ground for a software concept. If you can go into that environment and
Okay.
make it work, you've got a great concept. So then what we've done is we've taken our products as we've perfected them, and now we're moving outside. And so we have a standalone, for example, standalone lease accounting app, kind of a best of breed that's built not on NetSuite but outside, and it acts as an audit tool for accounting firms and then also for the end customer for their lease accounting. And so we've had tremendous adoption on that. We went from zero to over 6,000 customers on that in just 2 years. And so, and
Wow.
it's got a great amount of growth coming from that. And so in that thing, we're very close with QuickBooks and the accounting firms to do the same thing we're doing for NetSuite.
Oh, so you're expanding to other systems. You're not limiting yourself
Yeah,
to NetSuite. Okay.
no,
And
it's kind of our first thing, but that's where we're
mm,
kind of the grand plan.
I see, and take over the world. So let me ask you, Chris. Like you're a leader of a tech company. You've worked in tech for
Mhm.
years. How does it feel to found and to lead the product line of NetGains when you're not a technical person yourself? Like, where do you see that it actually brings you strengths, and where do you feel like maybe weaknesses or areas of improvements for you?
Sure. No, great question, Ron. And I think if you had asked me that 20 years ago, it would be a significant weakness that you might say, hey, if you don't understand the fundamental code, if you're not, an expert in the getting right down into writing the SQL queries and the things, you may find yourself very limited. Suddenly, as I grew up kind of in the NetSuite world with the platform, and now you
Yeah,
see Larry Ellison talking about they're writing their Cerner apps on Apex, which is their kind of their low or no code, and then we see like the rise of AI. It's an interesting change because suddenly not knowing the code is like something that can be made a strength through other augmentations in the technology. And so where we're really successful is actually working within the constraints of the
yeah,
NetSuite platform because we have the experience of it and how to maximize that. And that comes not from necessarily understanding deeply the code, but the business process and then mapping that to work. I see the future of it being that everyone is going to have to understand some of the code, and I've picked a lot of that up as I've gone here because I'm very interested in it, how it works. But it's like as we deal, rather than building something full stack from scratch, now we find
mm-hmm.
ourselves using a lot of the difficulty pieces, the Node.js, the binding between the database and the front end, all these things. The AI and the platforms are taking care of that for you now. And so you can really focus on this is what I wanted to do and give great instruction to the our dev teams on how we want to appear. So Now, 20 years later and going forward, I think it's quite a bit. My background in accounting and the application is turning out to be a great advantage because technology now is starting to become so amazing that the actual pure coding is not quite as important as it was previously. Yeah.
So you talked about. I think I watched a podcast you did recently, and
Hmm.
you talked about using ChatGPT to write some code for a collections app. I think, and
Yeah.
I guess so. Does in your app itself? Do you provide some tools for that integration, or are you just kind of doing this over in ChatGPT and pasting stuff in? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. It's still pretty or kind of the day. So a lot of how NetSuite they use, different IDEs, but most of it comes into the main Microsoft one. So you can use like the Git Copilot and the Git
A
AI.
Copilot,
But
yeah,
for the
yeah,
yeah, but for the most part, Gareth, you what we're doing is two things on the dev side. One is it can generate code where we can say, hey, I kind of like something like this. But it's all what it really is the most fantastic debugger anywhere.
yeah, yeah.
That's one of the real ways that we use that, and it's probably low tech, Gareth, paced, is that NetSuite gives a lot of error messages, but very often you're like they're incomprehensible. One of the things that the GPT is actually incredibly good at is taking that incomprehensible error message and providing all kinds of context on where, what, and how it might have been created. And so that piece is something that we're doing a lot with.
Now that's really interesting because I rage about poor error messaging. In fact, I wrote a blog about it a couple of years ago, and I still get messages about it. It drives me mad. But it's interesting too. So I mean, there was I think the guy who's the CEO of Nvidia the other week was basically
Hmm.
saying, "Don't learn to program," and which was probably a little bit of hyperbole. But I think that certainly roles for more junior developers, and there's a big shift already happening. Like you say, people like yourselves who are solutions architect who are now going, I can rough some code up, I can hack something together to try something out. I don't need to give it to a developer to do it. It's a massive change that's not coming, isn't it? It's a really big change.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's going to be. I see like the very same thing happening for like accounting. Like right now, accounting, all you hear about is
Mm,
the accountant shortage. But for all we know, there may be a surplus of accountants in the next 5, 10 years. But what's going to happen is the great accountants, just like the great developers, are going to become so productive and above what they already
yeah.
are that they're going to be able to do amazing things. So like I would, and you kind of mentioned exactly right, Gareth. I can hack something out and kind of do that, and I don't do that to be like, oh, I want to replace it, but like I know the better clarity I can give our dev team and the
Mm,
better
hmm.
insight, the better than when I hand it over to the guys who are truly talented. It's going to be just that much better because software's got one thing that we've learned is like software's got to resonate with people and there's a feel to it almost. It's not science, it's art. And so when you're making the art, if we can help give them kind of better feel for what our inspiration is, the better, when people are actually using it, the more they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think related to that was a question. So, I think on your LinkedIn profile, you have a subtitle of creating the next generation of finance tools. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I saw that there was a survey last year from a company called Activant Capital, and they said
Hmm.
finance people are drowning in manual work. So,
Yeah.
what is going wrong there, and is that something that you're trying to fix?
Yeah. So back, accounting really, double entry accounting as we know it started back in the 1500s with Pacioli. And, he didn't do what he did is not all that different than what we do today. If you go back and probably the greatest accounting team of all time was Nelson Rockefeller's, for Standard Oil. No computers, but like they knew the movements of all their goods and services through massive manpower to do that. And then as systems came into play, what we really did was we just kind of took what was on paper and digitized it. We didn't necessarily transform it. And that's provided some incredible things, but also it's created a lot of noise. Like most of what we find is that in finance apps, people have a very hard time finding the signal from the noise. And so that's kind of our first thing we want to be able to do is hone in on what is the essential piece, what's the signal, and really kind of start letting some of the noise go. There's a lot of false precision for KPIs out there and things like that. So we're kind of really about like, let's get to the core of what really matters and what you need to do to be successful. The other thing that we're really looking to do is there's all this hype. You can't go have a podcast here without talking about the AI. But what we're really thinking about there is how can we do something meaningful? And one of the things that we're working on is when I think of what is AI, what do we want to do? It's the greatest pattern recognition system that's ever been invented. It sees things that we don't see. Well, a lot of accounting is taking a transaction, applying judgment, and then categorizing it across various dimensions. Well, AI is going to be able to do that much better and faster, more accurately than a human, no matter how much we want to say. And so what we want to be able to do then is turn the transaction processing into something that can be very, very automated. And accountants right now are still just drowning in that. And I think there's two reasons. One is we can blame the tools, and then the other is a little bit we've got to look at ourselves as an industry and blame ourselves a little bit. When you go talk to a chief revenue officer, he will say, "You want me to make my number?" He will bang his fist on the table and say, "You better get me Salesforce if you want me to make my number. I need these tools." You go to the chief HRO at a Workday, they'll bang their fists. "Hey, you want to be compliant? I need Workday. I need a system." You go to the accounting team and you say, "What do you need?" And they go, "I can make anything work." Whatever. And if I got to work late and do an Excel, I'll do it. It's a great can-do attitude, but it's not one that pushes an industry to do that. So we feel like
change.
to change. So we feel like half our calling in making the finance tools of the future is raising the self-esteem of the industry and demanding a much better experience. And that's really when we grow up and long-term what we want to do.
I think that's a great tagline for your industry, raising the self-esteem of the financial industry. I love it.
Yeah.
And Chris, like this discussion, what you just said, it makes me want to ask you, like, if you had today a 20-something years old starting their career, and they want to join a tech company, but they have no tech skills, like, what would you recommend to them? What would be your top 3 advice to them?
Sure. Let me. I'll be happy to. In fact, I have a 20-year-old son serving a church mission down in Brazil, and so he's going to be back shortly, and his career is going to start. And so, as I've talked to him, I used to try to get him interested in what I did when he was in high school, and he'd be like, "No, Dad, I just want to work at Chick-fil-A with my friends and play football." But now he's now he's a lot more interested, and there are really a couple of things that I think they need to do. The first thing I would tell them, Ron, is the most powerful bit of career advice I ever got came from a book I read, and I am embarrassed to say I cannot remember which book, and I'm not able to find the quote. But essentially, the story was people that they'll come in, and you're an accountant, and you're a 50-year-old accountant. You come in, and a 25-year-old kid takes your job, and you get mad and say, "Well, how dare you? I got 25, I got 30 years experience. Do that." And the premise of the chapter in the book was, I hate to break it to you, but that 25-year-old kid has just as much skill as you do, because what you've been doing is learning for the first 5 years on the job. And then on average, after that, once we learn our job, you essentially coast. Your skills don't get any better. So the first thing, so when I read that when I was about 30, and I have taken that to heart. So literally every 5 years, I make sure I am pushing myself to learn new stuff. I've gone that. So a lot of my career, especially at NetSuite, at Workday, here is going where we haven't been before, and pushing edges, because there's plenty of, I can work my way out of a job as soon as someone knows it, because there's always the next frontier. And one of the reasons I feel like I know a lot and have the people come to me and ask for advice and have the reputation is not that I'm super smart or that I'm a genius. It's that I have 5 careers worth of experience now that I've pushed into the last 25 years by making sure that I go to the onto the edges. So I would tell them that the first thing you got to do is experiences matter more. Building your skills and your attributes those first 5 years is more important than the name of the company. I started out in working at the family business in our construction business, and I'll tell you what, it was amazing. I didn't have a prestigious Big Four, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I got 3 skills. I learned to talk to, we built houses in the millions of dollars. So we built houses for bank presidents, for professional athletes. And I learned how to talk to a bank president who had 1,000 25-year-old kids working for him, but I was the one doing his house and talking about that. And so he had to trust me more than anybody. And that experience meant more than anything. So that would be what I would, and that would lead into the second thing is I would tell people starting their career that you got to learn how to do presentations, and you got to learn how to talk and have those skills. Like, you cannot get very far. Being technically expert means you'll be a really valuable member of a team working for somebody else for a long time. You have to learn how to be able to have that that skill. And that's why actually I recommended that book, Process Consulting, because I was thinking about this, Ron, in that when I was in grad school, I had a professor who was a mentor and taught me so much. His name was Wayne Boss, and that was a book he taught. It was organizational behavior. And the reason why is that is a dry, boring, probably most likely poorly written textbook. And yet he made us go through it, and he said, you want to know how to be valuable in a meeting? Let me show you how. And we would go in the book, and he would talk about, these are the functions of in a meeting, harmonizing, clarifying, summarizing. And he'd say, you want to add value to a meeting? This is how you do it. You take these 3 things, even if you don't know the topic. And suddenly I learned how to apply theory into real world things. And so that's the book. I literally use that book every single day in all of my meetings, because he was like, this is how you run a meeting. This is how you learn. Dude, this is how you draw things out to make sure there's clarity. So that was good. And then the third thing I would do is I would tell young people starting their career, even though they're technical, be as close to the revenue line as you can. It's being part of sales, and this really changed my eyes when I was that. So being in accounting, you're used to being a cost center, and the best thing you could ever do in accounting is get ignored. Like, nobody ever comes to you and says, hey Chris, when you printed off that income statement and you use that 12 font point for that category there, I mean, hell of a job. I mean, that was, all you see are mistakes. But when you're close to the revenue line and you learn how to be part of the sales, it's entirely different. It's like you're seen as someone who adds value, who creates things, and and you can do things to gain that kind of credibility. And so, I know there's probably more on the, say, like on the softer side than the heavy tech side, but if for young techies who want to be an entrepreneur or want to rise in an organization like Oracle or something, that's really what I've learned. That's what you got to do if you want to be able to stand out.
Very good advice. I love the speech you just made. I think it's really good. It's high quality. For everybody listening, the book is Process Consultations from Edgar Schein. We'll put the name into the description. And in my introduction to you, in the introduction of this podcast, I said you had some awards with interesting names, and I see it was NetSuite Herbal Award and Supernova semi-finalist. What are they? It seems very fancy for NetSuite awards.
Oh, yeah. So I'll share a couple. They got the Hairball Award was when I was a customer of NetSuite. So it was their very first user conference called Suite World. It was the very first one, and I got a call, and they were like, "Chris, are you coming to Suite World?" And I was like, love to, but I don't think I'm able to make it. And they said, well, you really need to. And I said, why? They said, because you guys won an award. And then I was like, award, just like from Jim, just from like the Grinch. You didn't say an award. And so suddenly, my boss was like,
Right.
yeah, let's go. And so basically, the Hairball Award was we won that for the most complex implementation and customer that NetSuite had up to date. So that was kind of really where we got the start. The Supernova one was from Ray Wang, and he had a conference, when he was getting started there, and he kind of it was like an award that they were looking for people who'd done innovation, like he had it at the time. He had his 5 pillars. It was like cloud and unified communications, and so we had won. Got invited to his. He did like a conference every year in this really cool place in LA, and so that was again, it was like, hey, you guys did some really innovative accounting and cloud, and when cloud was still new. The award actually that I'm most proud of that I ever got was in 2015 at NetSuite. And inside of NetSuite, there's this tradition. They called it Club Evil, and that's where like the top 7 producers, and it kind of came from the first time someone sold $1 million at NetSuite. They went in, they say, kind of played like they were Dr. Evil, and so it stuck. And so this was like a big thing. And I was not a quota carrying AE. I was on the solution team, so I wasn't eligible. But in that particular year, in most years, but in that year, I had actually helped every single person. I had run the deal for every person who had gotten on there, the marquee deal on the thing. So they actually gave me a unique award. People call it the Chris Miller Award. That sounds egotistic. I should not do that. But actually, Jim McGeever and Zach Miller, the 2 presidents, they sent my family to Disney World, but it was like all expense, but it was like they got the guide and people thought we were like movie stars. It was like everyone said that was like the best award they'd ever gotten. So that was kind of like one of the global MVP thing. And just one of the cool things that NetSuite would do for its employees. So, but yeah, there's been a few. In there. So, but what I love about the solution consulting world or the pre-sales when I was there there were a lot of individual awards, but we really won and lost as a team. And kind of the ones I'm happiest about are those team awards that we were able to earn together on the people that I helped. So. Actually, nothing made me happier than if I could help one of the AEs actually make it to the Club Evil and get up there. It was one of my favorite things.
So yeah, I was before the podcast, I was kind of immersing myself in the finance world and sort of looking you up a little bit, Chris. And I was thinking about finance, and I was kind of thinking about it in relation to the world, the tech world. I mean, in tech, we have so many tools, right? And everybody has their favorite IDEs, everybody has their favorite language. And I was thinking about finance, and I thought, Excel. Excel it's a revolutionary tool, isn't it? It's a Swiss Army knife. It can do so many things. And then I was struggling to think, has there ever been any other tool in the finance world that's been as influential? Because I couldn't think of anything.
Oh no, Gareth, we have spent an inordinate amount of time pondering the exact same subject, and the short answer is absolutely not. The most powerful tool ever created was when VisiCalc erupted out of the world and then
Yeah.
came to Excel. I mean, it's just there's nothing that matches it for flexibility and the ability to do presentations. And what's amazing is, we spend so much time trying to get people out of Excel, and then it comes full circle, and then everything goes back into Excel, and so there's not a greater tool. Like we build a lot of systems, but I just run into a lot of people where they're just like, you'll get my Excel out of my cold dead hand, when is before they'll give it up. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to push people out. And there are things where it should be out, where you need controls and things that shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, when it really comes to reporting and taking all the data, I have to admit, there is a very good reason why people put it into Power BI or Excel, to kind of do the massaging. Where you get in trouble is when you're doing that transaction layer and trying to do your transactions and the balancing and relying on that. But when it comes to presenting the data, it's still the best.
And I guess my last question. So you shared a post on your LinkedIn page around the risk of sharing proprietary or confidential data, right, into LLMs, into ChatGPT. And I know there's been quite a few things written about this. Now, at the moment, the risk there, I think, is kind of minimal around finance, because ChatGPT is really, it's much more suited to text. And actually, math's a bit of a weak spot, isn't it? There's a laughable example where someone's asking it, "What's 2 + 5?" And it says 7, and then it says, "Are you sure it's 7?" He goes, "Yes, it's 7." Then it says, "But my wife said it was 8." And then ChatGPT says, "Well, your wife's right. It probably is 8 if she said so," which is pretty funny, right? But
that is. That's really good.
Yeah, but I mean, just on this, I mean, do you think that CFOs understand the approaching risk here? Because it's going to get to a point where you could drop in some kind of financial model, some closely guarded data, and ask ChatGPT to do some analysis, like you were saying earlier. But do you think that people understand this risk that's kind of coming here with this?
I think yes and no. It's a great question, Gareth. So I think that there are people who are initially worried, when you heard the stories about people dropped a bunch of data and then it got put into the training data and, kind of quickly for GPT. I think they have eliminated that's gone a lot better. However, no, I don't think that people kind of understand, how much data is being transferred, and they got to do that. And so one of the cases where we're using it is for flux analysis, and that's basically like your variance analysis in the months. And you're right, Gareth. So it's tough at math, but what you can do is we use it for to do again that pattern matching. So we'll load a month's worth of transactions and then the next month's worth of transactions and say, find me the differences and explain the balances. And ChatGPT does a surprisingly good job. Now that is not, it can't be the final thing, but like when you're closing the books, if you've ever been having to do variance analysis, when I was at ClearChoice, it would be like I'd be there at like 3 a.m. where we were like, we have to have it done before the next day. And your variance analysis start to fall into it's different because you spent a different amount of money, like there's not much insight happening there. And so it's done a really good job saying, it's made this was changed and that. So we're super careful about, okay, so if we're going to load that kind of data in, how do we make sure it's safe? And we're really doing a couple things. So for us, while sitting into the prompt in GPT would seem the obvious, we're much more interested in these running like Azure, the Azure AI services or Oracle AI services where you're really creating your own private training data and your own kind of mini vector database. And then that's what's being used to do it, because I think that you do run the danger of, if you get data commingled, it's starting to give you weird answers because it's using, it's trying to find these matches, and you don't want to do that. So that was a big concern of us that we want to address, is making sure that we're responsible for everyone's data. So we got to take good care of it.
Well, I think you're probably going to be giving some people some tips who are listening to this about things they can be using LLMs for. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. It's even though the LLMs are like kind of text-based, again, it's anything where there's a pattern. That's really where we're finding it works well. Classification. The other place that we've seen it starting to work is we're doing a lot of fraud analytics. Same thing. We take a bunch of data and say, find a pattern in here and match it against, say, like a Benford curve or something like that. It's great at that, and it can handle massively high volumes. And so it's going to be interesting because the world of fraud, financial statement fraud now is not going to have to just get by human auditors, but it's going to have to get past AI auditors, and that's going to really usher in a real era of like you're not going to be able to pull that much too many shenanigans anymore.
I mean, Chris, I think this will conclude today's Tech Captains podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time very much, and yeah, look forward to speaking with you guys again sometime.
Perfect. Bye bye.
Thanks, Chris.